The Price of Hunger, A Penny for the Hangman, by R.M. Hubbuck. A tragic tale of Victorian London. The Encounter. It was a bitter winter's night in the 1870s when I found myself wandering the streets of the East End of London, the air thick with the choking stench of soot, damp and desperation. The city's underbelly pulsed with misery. Beggars, drunks, prostitutes, and children with hollow eyes shuffled through the darkened alleys, scavenging, surviving, slipping through the cracks of a world that had long since abandoned them. I had come in search of a meal, but before I could reach the dimly lit eating house ahead, my path was blocked by a frail figure, a girl, no older than 14. "Spare a penny, sir," she whispered, her voice barely more than breath. "I ain't eaten today." She was a mess, clothes reduced to filthy rags, bare feet blackened from the frozen, dirt-covered streets. Tangled and matted hair fell over a face far too gaunt for her age, her cheekbones sharp beneath skin stretched thin by hunger. But it was her eyes that struck me most, deep sunken, filled with a pain no child should bear. I hesitated only a moment before speaking. "You will join me in a meal," I said firmly, "and I will not take no for an answer." For a second, she simply stared at me, as if kindness was something foreign to her, something long forgotten. Then, with a cautious nod, she followed me inside. The warmth of the cramped, smoke-filled eating house enveloped us as we entered, the air heavy with the scent of cheap stew, boiled potatoes, and damp wool. The few men inside barely looked up from their meals, hunched over their plates, shoveling food into their mouths like starving animals. I led the girl to a small booth at the back, away from prying eyes. A serving girl, her apron stained from the night's work, approached. "Stew, bread, and something warm to drink," I ordered. The girl across from me said nothing. She only stared at the table, her hands folded in her lap, as if afraid to look me in the eyes. When the food arrived, she didn't wait. She grabbed the bread with shaking fingers, stuffing it into her mouth as if she feared it would be taken away. "Slowly," I said softly, though I made no move to stop her. For a while I let her eat. Only when the hunger in her eyes dulled did I finally speak. "What is your name?" She swallowed hard, licking her cracked lips. "Lillian, sir." "How did you come to be here, Lillian?" She hesitated, shifting in her seat. "It's a long story," she whispered. "Then tell me," I said. "I will listen." She met my gaze then, and in her eyes I saw something else. A story waiting to be told. A story of pain, loss, hunger, and survival. And as she began to speak, I realized I was about to hear something that would haunt me forever. Lillian's story begins. "We weren't always like this," she said. "We weren't always starving. My father had a job once, my mother sang while she worked, and we were warm at night. That was a long time ago." She looked down at her hands, tracing the grime on her fingertips, as if remembering what they used to be before dirt and hunger claimed them. "My father was a shoemaker," she continued. "Not a rich man, but he worked hard, and we had just enough. Me and my brother Thomas, we had a home, small but ours. My mother kept it clean, and even when food was scarce, she found a way to make it stretch. She'd sing while she cooked, soft little tunes that made the hunger easier to bear." For a moment, her lips curled slightly, as if recalling a warm memory. But just as quickly, the light in her eyes faded. "Then, one winter, my father fell sick." She paused, staring past me, back into a time only she could see. "He tried to keep working, but he got weaker. His hands shook too much to stitch the leather. Customers stopped coming. We pawned everything we could, the clock, the chairs, even my mother's wedding ring. But it wasn't enough." Her fingers clenched into fists. "The landlord came. My father begged him for time, but he just laughed. The next week, the constables came instead. They dragged my father away in chains over a few shillings of unpaid rent." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "They called it debtor's prison." That was the day her family was torn apart. A life on the edge. They took her brother Thomas away. Her mother, already weak, didn't survive the sickness that spread through the workhouse. When her mother died, Lillian ran. She had no home, no family, just the cold, cruel streets of London. She begged, she stole, she learned how to survive. She fell in with a gang of street thieves, children like her who had nothing left. She came close to being caught once, almost dragged away in iron cuffs, but she ran faster. She watched her friends disappear, either to the gallows or the gutter, and through it all, she survived. A new beginning. Lillian fell silent, her fingers tracing the rim of her empty cup. I cleared my throat, pushing my plate aside. "Lillian," I said at last, "what if you didn't have to live this life anymore?" She frowned slightly. "What do you mean, sir?" I reached into my coat, placed a few coins on the table, and said, "I have a wife, children, a warm home, a family." Her eyes darkened, mistrust, fear. Too many years of cruelty to believe in kindness. "I don't take in strays, Lillian," I said gently. "I take in people who deserve a second chance." She stared at the coins. Slowly, carefully, she picked them up. And then she gave me her answer. A life worth living. Lillian never returned to the streets. She became part of our family, grew into a strong, kind woman, and in time had children of her own. And when she told them of that cold winter's night in London, she would smile and say, "That was the night my life truly began." The end.
Hey there, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe. It only takes a few clicks and means a lot to me. Thank you.